Hello everyone. Before starting the video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. About previous video. In my previous video, I covered the following topics along with configuration. Number 1. What is the wireless client isolation? Number 2. What is the client isolation allow list? If you don't know about the wireless client isolation and the client isolation allow list, then watch my previous video. In this video, I will discuss that, what is the management interface and how to configure it. Introduction to the management interface. Before proceeding with the configuration of the management interface, let me first briefly explain what the term management interface means and why we need to configure it. Once we have a clear understanding of the topic, it will be easier to follow what we will be doing in this video. A management interface is often described as a logical interface used to configure a network device. Normally, we think of an interface as a physical port, but in this context, the term management interface refers to a logical interface. When we procure a network device such as an access point, switch, or a router, it typically comes with one or more physical network ports, a default IP address, and login credentials, usually a username and password. The default IP address is assigned to the logical management interface, and is used specifically for management purposes. Initially, we must change the default IP address and login credentials to protect the device from unauthorized access. Now, the question is, how is this interface considered a logical interface? Let me explain why I'm referring to it as a logical interface, rather than a physical one. Some network devices come with a dedicated management port. If we want to access the web-based management interface of such a device to make any changes, we must connect our PC or laptop to that specific port only. We cannot access the management interface through any other physical port. In this case, the logical or management interface is associated with just one specific physical port. However, on most network devices, we can access the web-based management interface through multiple physical ports. Why is that? It's because the logical or management interface is shared across multiple physical ports. So, it doesn't matter which physical port we connect our PC to, we can still access the web-based interface. If we say that a management interface is a physical interface, that would be incorrect. If it were a physical port, we wouldn't be able to access the management interface from other physical ports, rather than only one port, and one physical port cannot be shared with other physical ports. It is the logical interface only, which can be shared across multiple physical ports. A logical interface can be mapped to either a single physical port or multiple physical ports, depending on the device configuration. A management interface is used to access the network device with one single IP address, regardless of the physical ports. The network devices that come with the default IP address and login credentials are known as managed devices. Because we can access the web interface of these devices and make the changes. The network devices that do not have any default configurations are known as unmanaged devices. Because these devices do not have the web interface to make any changes. Management interfaces use various protocols, such as SSH, Telnet, SNMP, HTTP, and HTTPS. The available protocol depends on what the device supports and which protocols are enabled by default. By default, some management protocols may be disabled, but we may enable these protocols later on. Normally, to make any changes or configuration, we access the web interface of these network devices via web browser, which uses either HTTP or HTTPS protocol. We also use the management interface to remotely access and configure the network devices, so that, to make any changes, we don't have to physically connect the device directly to our laptop or PC. On Ruckus Unleashed network, when we assign an IP address to a management interface, then we can access the master access point from a single IP address, regardless of which AP is currently working as the master AP and what IP address it has. The management interface is also used for security purposes. Let me explain how. If the management interface and client devices are on the same network, meaning they share the same IP address range, then there's a risk that someone on the network could gain unauthorized access to the device. To prevent this, we can isolate management traffic by assigning the management interface an IP address from a different network or subnet, along with a different VLAN. This separation ensures that regular users on the main network cannot access the management interface, enhancing the overall security of the device. I will practically demonstrate everything once we begin configuring the management interface. This also applies to other network devices that I mentioned previously. I would suggest not skipping any part of the video, so that you have a clearer understanding about the management interface. Without wasting further time, let's start the practical section. Management interface configuration. The practical section. After the introduction of the management interface, it will now be easier for us to understand what I will be going to do in this video while configuring the management interface. Before proceeding, let me share with you that I am using the IP address range of 10.0.2.x on my test network. If I open the command prompt and check the IP address of my laptop by typing the command ipconfig and press the Enter button. Upon scrolling up a little, under the Ethernet adapter section, we can see that the IP address of my laptop is 10.0.2.56, means my laptop is on my test network. I will now minimize the command prompt page. To access the management interface settings, first, I have to access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface. To do that, I will open an internet browser and type the IP address of the primary master AP. The IP address of the current primary master AP is 10.0.2.151. After typing the IP address, press the Enter button. Here, press the Advanced button, and then the link given below. The login page will appear. I will not enter the username and password right now, because I wanted to show you something else, which is important to be noted. Let me open another tab. This time, I will type the IP address of the secondary master AP, which is 10.0.2.152. Press the Enter button. Again press the Advanced button, and then the link given below. We can see that, upon trying to access the Ruckus Unleashed network using the IP address of the secondary master AP, has redirected us to the IP address of the primary master AP, which is 2.151. The same way, if I open another tab and try to access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface, using the IP address 10.0.2.88, which is the IP address of an access point, currently acting as a member AP on Ruckus Unleashed network. If I press the Enter button, press the Advanced button, and then the link given below. Again we will see that, this will also redirect us to the IP address of the primary master AP. Having said this, by default, we can access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface, using any of the IP addresses of the access points, currently added to the Ruckus Unleashed network. As we see that, I successfully access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface, using the IP address of the secondary master AP and the member AP. By default, the Ruckus Unleashed network will be allowed to access using any IP address of the access points, which are currently active and alive. It looks very simple and easy, that we don't have to remember the IP address of the primary master. But the problem occurs, if we remember the only IP address of the primary master, the secondary master or the member AP. We would think that, we can easily access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface using the IP address of the AP that we remember. But what will happen, if the only access point, whose IP address we remember goes down? Then we won't be able to access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface. In that case, we will have to waste our time to find the IP address of another access point, which will be active and connected to the network. I will now close the unnecessary tabs. On this page, I will enter the username and password, and then, press the Unleashed button to log into the web management interface of Ruckus Unleashed network. To access the management interface settings on the main page, scroll down and click on the Admin and Services tab to expand it. Under the System tab, click on the IP settings. On the right side, under the IP settings tab, we can see the IP address of the current primary master AP, which is manually assigned. This IP address will change once the primary master AP goes down and the secondary master AP replaces the primary master AP. To configure the management interface, click on the second tab, which says Management Interface. Here, we will have to configure the management interface settings. By default, the management interface is disabled. We have to enable the management interface. I will tell you now that, why we need to configure this management interface, side by side, while configuring these settings. To enable the IPv4 management interface, simply check the checkbox. The description appears, which says, please, set the IP address in the same subnet with the device IP address, if VLAN is disabled. Means that, we have to assign an IP address from our test network, if we are not going to configure another VLAN for management interface, or, if the VLAN is disabled. For now, I will not enable the VLAN, and I will enter an IP address from my test network. To avoid any conflict, before entering the IP address, we must check that, the IP address we are going to assign to the management interface, must not be assigned to any other device on the same network. I will open the command prompt and type the ping command followed by the IP address of the management interface, which I will be configuring soon. If I press the enter button, we will see that we are getting no response from this IP address. This is because, this IP address is not assigned to any other device on this network, or on the test network. I will enter the IP address from my test network, and then in the subnet mask, I will enter the subnet mask of my test network. If we want to use the radius services on the management interface, we can simply check the checkbox. For the SNMP services, we can see, this is checked by default, but grayed out. It means, the SNMP services will work on the management interface by default. It does not matter which network's IP address we assign to the management interface. To apply the settings, simply press the Apply button and wait for the settings to be applied. The settings have been applied. If I open the command prompt now, and press the up arrow from the keyboard, and then enter the Enter button, we will see, the IP address, which was not responding previously, has started responding now. This is because, now we have assigned this IP address to the management interface. I will now open another tab and try to access the Ruckus Unleashed network using the IP address that we have assigned to the management interface. Press the Advanced button and then the link given below. The login page of Ruckus Unleashed network has been accessed successfully. The important thing is that, if we check the IP address now, it will not redirect us to the IP address of the primary master. This is because, when we configure the management interface, it will take us to the Ruckus Unleashed network, regardless of the access point, which will be currently working as the master AP. After management interface configuration, we don't have to worry about the IP addresses. We only have to remember a single and one IP address, which is the management interface IP address. I will now enter the username and password, and then press the Unleashed button, so that I can log into the main page of Ruckus Unleashed network. Again, if I check the IP address of the management interface, it remains the same. I will again go to the management interface settings, and this time, I will configure an IP address from another network with a different VLAN. The question is, why do we do this? As we know that we can configure different VLANs to separate the traffic of the clients on the main network and the management interface. This is just like the guest network concept, where on public Wi-Fi, we separate the main network or office network traffic from the public network traffic, to ensure that no one from the public network gains unauthorized access to the main network. In this case, if I assign an IP address from the different network to the management interface and configure a different VLAN, then the traffic of my test network and the management interface will be separated from each other. I will type an IP address of a different network, which is 192.168.10.222, and then, in the subnet mask field, I will enter the subnet mask. If I enable the VLAN for management interface, remember that by default, all the traffic will use the VLAN 1. In simple words, the default VLAN for communication is 1. Since I have changed the IP address of the management interface to a different network, so, I will have to change the VLAN number as well, if not, the traffic will not be separated. But if I do not change the VLAN number and leave it as the default, then press the Apply button, a message appears, which says that, we have to assign another number to the VLAN. Because we have entered an IP address from a different network, so I will press the OK button and then, in the Access VLAN field, I will enter a different number to assign it to the VLAN. We can type any number but not the one, which is the default VLAN number. Since we have now assigned an IP address of a different network and we also have changed the VLAN number, so now, our traffic of the test network and the management interface will be separated. Again, if we want to use the radius services on this IP address, assigned to the management interface, simply check the checkbox. The SNMP service is enabled by default for any IP address, which we configure on the management interface. I will press the Apply button to apply the settings. Since I have changed the IP address of the management interface, from my test network to a different network, so this page will not be responsive anymore. The question is, if we assign an IP address of a different network and the VLAN to management interface, then, how would it be possible to access the web management interface of Ruckus Unleashed network? We will still be able to access the Ruckus Unleashed network using the local IP addresses of the access points added to the Unleashed network. If I go to the previous tab and refresh the page, we will see that the Ruckus Unleashed network is working on the IP address of the primary master AP 2.151, which is the IP address of my test network. If I go to the management interface settings, we can see that now the IP address of a different network has been applied to the management interface and is currently working. Although we have isolated the traffic of both networks from each other, at the same time, we can also access the Ruckus Unleashed web management interface, using the IP address of the primary master which is from our test network. I will now open another tab and verify whether I will be allowed to access the Unleashed network using the IP address of the secondary master. We can see that we have successfully accessed the Ruckus Unleashed network. Next, I will enter the IP address of the member AP. Again, we will be allowed to access the Ruckus Unleashed network. Now, I will try to access the Ruckus Unleashed network using the IP address that we assigned to the management interface. We will not be able to access the Ruckus Unleashed network this time. The question is why? The answer is, we have assigned an IP address of the different network and we also have changed the VLAN number. So, if we want to access the management interface from our test network, which is communicating on VLAN 1, so, we will not be able to access the management interface. As I said, using a different VLAN number means, we will separate the traffic of our test network and the management interface. Now, the question may arise in our mind that, after changing the IP address of the management interface to another network and the VLAN number, how would we access the management interface? If we assign a different network IP address and change the VLAN number, then we must configure the VLAN on our network. Having said this, the PC or the laptop, which is connected to the VLAN 2 network, will be allowed to access the Ruckus Unleashed network via management interface. If I try to ping the IP address of my management interface, we will see that we will get no response from the IP address of the management interface. One thing is proved that assigning an IP address of a different network and changing the VLAN number will separate the traffic from the test network and the management interface network. Wait. An important question, you may also have this in your mind. The question is, despite configuring an IP address of a different network and a different VLAN on the management interface, means isolating the test and the management interface network, if we are still able to access the Ruckus Unleashed network from our test network, I mean, using the local IP addresses of the access points added to the Unleashed network. Then how can we say, configuring a management interface with a different network's IP address and VLAN supposed to be secure? I will give you the answer, but I will not go into the details right now because I am going to make the next video on this topic. That, how can we restrict the clients on our test network from accessing the Ruckus Unleashed network? Means that, how would we allow someone to access the Ruckus Unleashed network via management interface, if they are trying to access from VLAN 2 network only? To allow the VLAN 2 traffic only, let me tell you that, we can do that. We can allow a single IP address, a range of IP addresses or, even the subnet, from which access to the Unleashed network will be allowed only. Other than that, no one will be allowed to access the Ruckus Unleashed network. We can also restrict our complete test network from accessing the Ruckus Unleashed network. Means that no one will be allowed to access the Ruckus Unleashed network from our test network. I will explain everything step by step in the next video. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you now have a better understanding of what is the management interface and why do we need to configure the management interface. Next video. Management Access Control. In my next video, I will cover the topic, Management Access Control, means, how would we allow or restrict unauthorized access to the Ruckus Unleashed network from specific IP address, range of IP addresses or even a specific network. Hi. If you liked this video, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Also leave your query in the comments section below. I will be more than happy to entertain. Thanks.